Adam, to paint the picture, what's the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality?
Okay. Good question. Virtual reality is where you have no perception of the real world. So it's entirely contained within a headset. You see an entirely simulated world. Augmented reality is where you have the virtual overlaying the physical. So you can see virtual things within the real space.
Yeah. So how are companies these days differentiating between AR and VR products?
Depends on the use case. I think that kind of technology, for a long time, it's been a solution looking for a problem. There's been a lot of prototypes, sort of proof of concepts. It hasn't really taken a strong hold yet. At least it's beginning to find footholds here and there. VR, I think that's predominantly gaming, situations where you want to escape the real world, essentially. And VR is really good for that because it's fully immersed. Augmented reality, it's finding use cases in industry, so manufacturing, worked with some projects with Siemens and the ability to overlay digital information on perhaps a piece of machinery that the engineer is working on, bring up a fact file about this particular engine, what work's being carried out on it, being able to point to different components and kind of state what they are, etc. So in engineering, there's been some use cases found there. In retail, so one of the projects as well worked in retail. If you're a company that sells sofas, you might have a website, e-commerce, where you can see pictures of the sofa, but you can create tools whereby you can create a digital version of that sofa or any real product. You can display that as a widget on the web page, so you can spin it around, you can zoom in, zoom out, change colors, things you can't do with pictures. So it gives you a nice little virtual reality, well, not VR, 3D modeling. But what was also interesting is that you could project that sofa into your living room. So that's augmented reality. So with your camera, you can have a look, say, right, I'm going to put the sofa in that corner, see what it looks like. Does it fit? Does the color go with the rest of the color scheme? Maybe I'll see what it looks like in this color. So it gives you more experience, more information to help you make that decision on whether you're going to buy it or not. So it's kind of leveraging and improving on standard pictures, perhaps.
Yeah. I know there's quite a convergence now between AI, AR, and VR. You've worked with companies building and blending generative AI within the immersive technology. Do you think that's the future of the world, that kind of metaverse kind of angle?
Yeah, I mean, metaverse as a term, it was the it girl for a long time, and then it seems to have kind of fizzled out. Maybe it's just becoming embedded in other technologies or other processes without it being labeled as such. But yeah, the blend of AI and AR, VR, it's real. And again, there are real use cases. So again, another project, same company, they had another app designed for the FMCG industry, supermarkets essentially. And the problem they were trying to solve was, in supermarkets, there's a lot of governance about what products are shown on the shelves. So let's say you're Heinz. You go to Tesco's and say, you're going to buy 1 million units of baked beans on the condition that they all appear on this particular aisle, on this particular shelf. There has to be X number of units visible at all times. There can't be any gaps. All the products have to be the correct way around. And if someone goes in and inspects and finds that this isn't to the agreed plan, then they'll get fined. So the supermarkets get fined a lot because of this governance about where products should and shouldn't be. So they solved that by producing a mobile phone app for the supermarket worker to be able to turn it on, essentially just walk along an aisle with the camera looking at the shelves, and overlaying the camera would be icons. So it's AI that is recognizing what the products are, understanding where they are and where they should be, and then AR is highlighting all the products, and it's either green if it's in the right place, or it's red if it's in the wrong place, or there's a missing unit, etc. So you have your AI and your AR blended together. The worker just simply walks along the aisle, and then it generates a report saying, these are all the things that are wrong. Go and fix them. So yeah, it's finding the right problems to solve. I think a lot of people get carried away because it's so exciting. There's so many things you can do. And maybe people are building things that they think would be useful, but in reality, there's no product market fit. So it always has to come down to, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then you look for solutions to solve the problem. You don't start with a solution and then look for problems.
Yeah, I know you have a few other examples that we'll dive into, but before we do, I know you moved into a technology consulting route quite quickly on after university, but what's your core background and career journey so far?
Right. I'll start at the beginning. I think as a kid, I was just always into tech. I was one of the first kids I knew who had an actual PC at home. I'm that old. As a teenager, 14, 15-year-old, I was building websites for local businesses. So that kind of started this passion for technology and entrepreneurship, I guess. Then I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do in life. Thought I wanted to be a Royal Marine. Tried that as a reserve. Not for me. Then I thought maybe I want to be a pilot. Well, to be a pilot, you need a degree. Didn't know what degree I wanted to do. So I looking through prospectus. AI. Oh, that sounds really interesting. So I did an AI degree. Did quite well. First class. But this was a long time ago. I graduated in 2008, and this was before AI was really a thing in industry. There's kind of smatterings of companies doing something, but compared to today, it was just non-existent. I was lucky that I got a graduate consultant developer role straight from uni in Oxford, and they were using AI a bit in kind of EU research projects and such, so I got a bit of industry experience there. Did that for a couple of years, learnt the trade. I was doing lots of different technologies, lots of different solutions. It was good. It gave me a broad use case of things and experience, but I felt I was never going to become an expert at any one thing. So I picked the one thing I liked and then left and just went freelance, started from zero. So from there, as you do, you start on small projects, small clients. Over time, you build up reputation, work on bigger projects, bigger clients. And then it got to a point whereby I had too much work that I could do on my own. And that's when I started hiring a team and became a consultancy, working on client projects. And I did that for quite a while. Different projects, different industries, small startups, blue chips, kind of really diverse. But we always kind of had an angle of emerging technology. So like, what was the new technology that we could leverage to try and solve these problems? So AI, ML, VR, AR, blockchain, crypto were kind of the spice to the projects we worked on. And did that for a long time. It was a good lifestyle business. We didn't have any kind of intentions of being an IBM. We're just happy to kind of pick the projects that were most interesting, and we enjoyed it. And then kind of around COVID time, when everything went a bit mental, I kind of took a step back and then thought, well, instead of building other people's projects, other people's products, I want to build something for me. I want to be in a company from the start. I want to build something that I can say was mine and take from 0 to 100. So that's when I started kind of full-time CTOing, if that's a thing. So first in the AR, VR company, Omnias, did that for a couple of years, built the projects that described. From there, went into AI, full-on AI with Ohchat, and did that for 2 or 3 years. And now moving on to something entirely different, which maybe we'll touch on later.
Yeah. I also looked on LinkedIn, and it says within 2 years, you co-founded a business from a bootstrapped idea to a $65 million investment. And then you left. So why would you leave a rapidly growing AI tech startup? Like, what were you thinking at the time?
Multiple things. It just wasn't the right thing for me. It started as an idea. I got approached. Could I help build this product? Initially, it was actually a different product, but then worked out very early that wouldn't work. So then this was a time kind of ChatGPT was kind of coming out and becoming really popular, and everyone was looking at how could this technology, the LLMs, be leveraged. And then the idea kind of evolved into chatbots, and it was very much about the idea of, well, how can we create digital twins, an AI mimic of real people? So not just AI chatbots for the sake of it. Can we create actual AIs that mimic people in a way that is almost indistinguishable? So with that, we sought out kind of minor celebs and influencers who wanted an AI version of themselves so that their fans could interact with them en masse, because a person doesn't have the time or the bandwidth to communicate with everyone. And unlike some kind of content creator websites where they kind of outsource that to Indians or people around the world, we wanted to be upfront. So no, this is an AI version of this person. We're not pretending it's the real person. So building that tech was really interesting because, again, the technology was just kind of coming out. We had the image models that were there. A lot of open source was kind of early stage. And there's a lot of problems to solve. And that's kind of what we were doing. And we're doing well. And we got a lot of kind of early investment. I think maybe 4.5 million or so over 3 rounds. But the business itself, it was going in a direction that I didn't want to go down. It wanted to go heavily down the adult route, and that's just not somewhere I really wanted to be. I didn't want to be kind of associated with that. Doesn't look good on your CV for a start. And there's a number of things that just didn't sit right. And then it's kind of, well, I'm not the right person for this company. You guys go and do what you do. You'll be successful. Great. But it's time for me to change direction.
So effectively, you built the AI OnlyFans to begin with.
Yeah. So yes, there's the LLMs. We had fine-tuned LLMs to produce the content that we needed. A lot of prompt engineering to get, first of all, guardrailing, so making sure the LLM wasn't producing content that was kind of illegal. So it's a lot of guardrailing in the prompting, a lot of fine-tuning for personality types and getting it to respond in a way that the human would respond. So what is their texting style? Some are kind of long prose, some are very short and snappy, lots of emojis. So trying to get that very individualized responses. Then there was the image models that we had to fine tune as well, finding the right model to use, which one gave the most realistic images. Then it was a case of creating what are called LoRAs. It's a kind of a sub model that kind of gets bolted onto the image model that allows you to train the mod or train the LoRa for likeness. So for example, we had Carmen Electra. We had to train the model to learn the likeness of Carmen Electra. So that if you're chatting to Carmen, so send me a picture of you at the beach, it would generate a picture of Carmen Electra at the beach. So that in itself was like really cutting edge. We used outsourced audio models, 11 Labs, to have the speech element as well. So we trained audio models on the voice of the twins so that you could have a two-way voice chat with the twins and you could speak to Carmen Electra and she would respond in her voice. And then kind of beyond that, it's, well, that in itself, it's quite cool. But it was still missing an element of immersiveness because each chat was essentially a new chat. There was no real sense of history or memory. So then we designed and built a custom memory system that allowed the capture of important facts that were discussed during conversations so that the LLM could refer back to a discussion that was had maybe a month ago. So it could pull in facts. Oh yes, can you remember when I did this and we were talking about that? So you have your custom memory units. And then we wanted to go into kind of agentic behavior as well. Why can't these twins, these bots, have a profile or reach outside of our platform? So can we get these agents to hook up to X, Twitter, create a profile, and then speak on tweet about what they're doing today? Because we also had these kind of life planner schedules whereby each twin had a set of things that they're doing today or doing next month or 6 months. So when I'm chatting to the twin, she's talking about going to the supermarket today. You could be chatting to the same twin and having the same conversation because that twin is doing something today that is shared. It's not just random, not just having random conversations. So again, we had this life scheduler and all these things. It was just really, really interesting technology to work with. And those core technologies will be really useful in other industries and other problems being solved alongside this kind of industry as well.
Yeah. So how did that actually work in terms of the AI? Because I'm just thinking, if you were posting on X or any social media platform from a digital twin, some people are going to look at that and think, oh, it must be someone just pressing a button and typing it out themselves. What was like the back end technology behind it all?
It required a bit of cleverness to be able to hook into the APIs. And again, because of the scheduler, you could say, right, this is the thing that this twin is doing today. Generate a tweet and post it using the APIs. So the technology was basically standard scheduling, who's doing what today. And then you had custom LLMs that were saying, generate a tweet, which in itself has specific requirements. When someone's writing a tweet, it's very different to how they might be posting to LinkedIn or having a deep conversation with someone. How long it is, the use of emoticons and emojis and the topic. And you could also have an image generated to match what was said. So let's say twin X, I'm currently at the supermarket. So you'd have the text, which was describing what they're doing. You could also generate an image of what they're doing. So it would have an image of that twin at the supermarket. So this was kind of how we tried to make it as realistic as possible. And yeah, it would be easy to say, well, yeah, that's not AI. That's not AI. That's just someone texting and pressing send. But realistically, if you've got hundreds of twins all sending multiple tweets per day, that's it's a scaling problem. A person can't really do that, and it just becomes too expensive and hard to manage. So it had to be automated.
Yeah. So basically, when the AI bot posts online, it is actually them.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah.
But it's with what we were doing, it was very clear that this is an AI. Whereas what we are seeing in the real world is that a lot of content is being posted by AI while the human is pretending that it is them who's posting. So how many things do you see on LinkedIn now that you can see ChatGPT wrote that? It's like we're becoming flooded with AI content, but people are pretending that it's not AI content, it's from them.
Yeah. I think we can start to identify when the content we see is written by ChatGPT. There are a few giveaways, and I know people mention the M dash and kind of overly exaggerated Americanized language. So I think we're getting better at that, but ultimately the technology is going to become more sophisticated. So I imagine it's going to be tricky to stop or understand when it is being used. I mean, do you have any tips on that generally? Like understanding when an AI piece of text is being used and when it's not?
Like you said, there's some kind of key things, certain way punctuations used that you can kind of spot. And again, if it's a British person and they're using American spellings and things. But it is hard. I think text is very hard. Images, that used to be very easy to spot. But again, that's becoming very hard to spot now. And even though I've been looking at hundreds, if not thousands of AI generated images, I'm struggling to find the difference between the two. And that's only going to get better. Like, the technology is only going to get better. So how do you spot it? There's going to come a point where you can't. So how do you approach that? For me, I think I just assume everything is AI until proven otherwise. We're kind of in that space now. And I think the next step is going to be, well, me as the user, there's so much noise on the internet and I don't have the time or the bandwidth to consume it all. So I'm probably going to have an AI that is summarizing what is out there to make it useful for me. So we're going to end up in a world where AI is generating content, AI is reading and summarizing content. The human is just going to be doing, well, not a lot. So it's a strange old world we're moving into, I think.
You're basically going to have your own AI agent who looks at content for you and does all the dirty work for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a business in the US, and I was talking about them yesterday, FlockX by Fetch AI, if you've come across those guys. And they're trying to commercialize it, but for both businesses and just general users. So you can employ and deploy your own agent who does the dirty work.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who's been working on something very similar. That's property.ai. And the idea is that you want to know everything that's going on in and around your postcode. So you sign up, you get an account, you put in your postcode, and it scans various data sources, pulls in information, public domain information, creates a summary, and then creates an audio file, which is essentially like a podcast style piece of audio that you can listen to in the car. And it tells you about what's happening in your local area. There's some road work planned next month. That's going to mean this road's blocked. This house has just been sold for X amount of pounds. And yeah, so me as a person, I don't need to troll the internet to find information. It just comes to you in a nice summarized form that gives you just what you want, what you need, and filters out all the things you don't need.
Yeah, I'll add that to the description as well, because that sounds really interesting. It's interesting. We hear a lot about Metaverse, voice bots, AI companions, basically agents. But from your experience, what's still science fiction and what's genuinely live right now that would surprise people?
What would surprise people? Good question. Throughout kind of the last few decades, AI has been one of those things whereby no one knew about it, but it kept creeping into your life without knowing it was AI. For example, sat-nav. That's something that people had for a long time. They're using it, didn't know it was AI. And there's other examples of where it's just kind of crept into your life without knowing, made things better and easier, and you go about your life as you would. There's probably I think since ChatGPT, the world has changed, and now kind of everything's AI, and everything's public, and everyone's selling everything as this is an AI powered this, and this is AI generated that, and it's very much down your throat now. But it's probably going to be the things you don't see, the things you don't hear, that's going to make the biggest difference or biggest changes in the world. What's happening behind the scenes. Yes, there might be this big fancy AI product that you need to buy, but it's kind of the little things that are going on behind the scenes that you're not really aware of, that's just kind of making things incrementally a bit better each day. Not really sure what else to kind of add to that.
I suppose in terms of avatars, AI avatars, your personal AI avatars, do you think that will be mainstream anytime soon?
Yes. Again, probably one of those things that creeps in. I mean, we've all had Siri and Alexa and those for a while now. They're AI agents, essentially, AI bots, chatbots. They've been there, sat in the corner of the room. You use them to listen to the radio or buy things and such. Again, people didn't really consider that to be AI. It's just a cool little tool, cool little thing you have in the living room, and it listens to you in the background and knows all your secrets. And those things will just become more prominent. So there will be tools, avatars that you can just say, right, plan out my next week. I've got this going on. I've got that going on. I need to be here on that certain day and time. And it will just go off and do these things and update your calendar. And it will book hotels and it will book train travel. And it will creep into your life. It will start off as something simple and then evolve and evolve and evolve until the point where it's just so commonplace that you forget it's AI. It's going to become an everyday thing.
Yeah. We're definitely entering a strange new phase with the companions. I find it quite exciting, to be honest. It's kind of gradually seeing it improve. I also looked at Ohchat's website earlier today when I was setting up, and it's very different to the Ohchat website I saw 2 or 3 years ago when I saw you joined. And there's now a feature on there which is the AI girlfriend. So what is an AI girlfriend?
It's kind of...
How does that even work?
Some people just want to communicate and connect with someone or something. If this connection is missing in their life because they can't find real people to communicate with, they still have a need. So why not use technology to fulfill that need? Yeah, it's AI. They know it is. But if you can still have a realistic conversation with someone who listens to you and wants to know what's going on in your life, and you can tell them your problems that you're going through, you can tell them what your hopes and aspirations are, and they validate and encourage you to do what you want to do. And it's not something that's going to be, well, maybe it is, something that's going to be all pervasive. It's something you can kind of switch on and switch off. Maybe you're just feeling down at the minute and you just want someone to chat to. It's just that there's someone there even though it's not real, it's not real, it feels real, and you get from it what you want to get. It's companionship.
Guaranteed companionship.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
They're not going to say, no, I don't like you, go away. Well, technically, that has happened to me. Just trying to spam it, trying to break it, and you're just kind of giving it the same message over and over again. Eventually it says, I'm sorry, I can't carry on this conversation if you're just going to say that over and over. So yeah, you can technically get it to not like you, but it's someone that's always going to be there. They're not busy at work. They're not kind of traveling, so they can't chat. They're always going to be there. So that's the appeal, and that's kind of what makes them useful.
Yeah. So was it the customers, consumers who were asking for these specific features, or was it an idea you had that you thought to productionize?
Yeah.
Productize?
I would say the early ideas came from us, assuming this is what people wanted. Thought, well, this is where the technology is going, so let's get in there early and try and pioneer it. And it's kind of, there's been mixed reception. There's lots of sign-ups, lots of kind of people who really get into it and use it for a long time and really build up relationships with the avatars. There's some people who kind of come on, try it out, and then leave. It's like everything, really, all products. It's really a case of, well, this is the core technology, this is what we can do. How can we now really find that solid product market fit that kind of increases retention and all the things that you'd typically have trying to launch and build your own product.
How many users and customers did you actually have on the site?
At the last count, there was over 200,000. And that kind of came within a fairly short period of time. So a lot of growth in user numbers without really doing any marketing. There was no kind of concerted marketing budget to go and find users. We relied a lot on getting the influencers to send their fans to us. So it's kind of, well, go to an influencer, say, hey, we've got this idea. Do you want to have your AI avatar? It can talk to your fans. You earn money for everyone that communicates with your avatar. But in order for you to make money, you need to send people to our site in order for them to use it for you to make money. So it's kind of, by them promoting Ohchat, they were benefiting financially. So it's kind of using that as a kind of a guerrilla marketing tool to get people on board and using it. And it seemed to work pretty well.
That's clever. Yeah. Were there, I suppose, those who had their digital twins, the influencers, were they pushing for it at the start, or did you have to almost convince them that this was where the future was going?
Yeah, I mean,
both.
Bit of both. The concept was fairly solid. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go and have a photo shoot to take images, which is expensive. You don't need to spend time chatting to all your fans. You don't need to do anything, and you earn money. So there's a clear financial benefit to them. So why wouldn't you? Getting them to then promote the site and their avatar, their twin, that was it's tricky. Some better than others. Some were like really into it and really pushing. Some others were kind of not really doing much. But then it was a case of, well, these guys are really pushing it and they're earning money. You're not really pushing it and you're not earning money. So therefore, it's you get what you give kind of thing.
Yeah. So how do you actually create a digital twin? Now, say, for example, I wanted a digital twin. What would the process be? Just generally.
Just generally. So the key components are the LLM for the conversational element, the image gen for the generating image. There are a lot of cogs in the big machine. For example, if you're chatting to a twin and you say, send me a picture of X, Y, and Z, there needs to be various steps to understand the context or what it is the user's asking for. So there's a step which sends to another LLM saying, is this user message asking for an image? Or are they asking for an audio response? Or are they asking for X, Y, and Z? So there's various kind of reasoning to understand what is the user asking for, and then send that off to different models. Well, they just asked a question, so therefore that goes to the LLM. They've asked for an image, that goes to the image model. They've asked for this and such. So there are kind of different steps, and there are levels of guardrailing and such. So it is quite complex when you put it all together. But it's, at its core, all you really need is an LLM for something to chat to. That's kind of the foundation on which you would kind of consider an avatar, something you can communicate with. And LLMs, they're kind of everywhere now. You can hook into ChatGPT API. You can host your own small LLM. There's a lot of prompt templates you can use to kind of get the LLM to respond as a companion, as opposed to an assistant or some other kind of persona. And in your prompt, you can tell it what kind of personality you want it to have, what kind of background they have, and really fine-tune it, tweak it to your exact requirements. What do you want in a companion bot? What kind of person or personality do you want to be interacting with?
Yeah. And so the customers on the site, or just generally, are they asking for specific people, or are they just kind of having a browse and then selecting who they want?
Bit of both. The traffic from the actual real twins, they come to the site, they may interact with that twin for a while, but then they can browse and see, oh, this person looks interesting. But there is a mix between digital twins, which are obviously the real people, and artificial avatars. So these characters are entirely fictional, and they have very different personality types. So maybe you don't want to speak to Carmen, you want to speak to Snow White, or some other kind of fictional character, or a character who's not from kind of actual fiction, but someone who's just made up. Luna, who's Japanese, and she's into e-gaming and this and that. So that's a kind of personality type that fits me. So therefore, I'll chat with them.
Yeah. Based on the customer data and analytics, what are the most shocking discoveries and behaviors of those on the site?
Oh, let's have a think.
What was unexpected?
I guess one of those, you kind of maybe expect most users to be kind of middle-aged men, but that wasn't the case. It was actually a number of women and young people and different kind of personality types that you maybe wouldn't associate with this kind of technology. So the kind of the demographics were a bit of a revelation. What else? It's kind of, we tried to build it so that it was the technology that generated the most lifelike images, the most accurate images to real life, using a Flux image model. But then some of the characters were on Stable Diffusion, which is older and doesn't generate as good quality images, but it had more flexibility. So although we were thinking, well, people want realism, the characters that had the other model with the more flexibility were really popular. And also, we expected the twins, which were based on real people with following, to be the most popular on the site, when actually some of these artificial characters were up in the top 5 consistently, which again was unexpected. So yeah, it's you think, well, the best tech will always win out, and actually, some cases, the lesser tech solves a need that people are actually wanting, which you didn't expect.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to go on the site and kind of compare, contrast how it all works. It's interesting. Something else I wanted to touch on, which is similar, is more so on the commercial pressure that you probably would have faced. Because ultimately, while it's great building the tech and creating something innovative, it needs to generate some kind of return on investment. It's a business. So what were your priorities as the CTO in terms of building that business case? How were you actually generating revenue and creating a proper business case that could be scaled?
Yeah, so one of the key differences between this kind of technology, this kind of product, and others is that because it's so heavily built on AI inference, whether that's generating LLM responses or images or soon videos, that's very expensive, and it takes a lot of expertise to get it running well and stay running well.
Why is it so expensive?
GPUs. So you need GPUs.
Data storage.
The storage, not so much. It's the GPUs. In order for you to do any kind of inference, you need big, bulky, expensive GPUs. And there's different ways you can try and manage this. Because, for example, you might have one GPU and that costs $6,000 a month. And that has a very limited amount of throughput that you can use, because when it's, let's say it's generating an image that takes 30 seconds, that means you're limited on how many images can be generated by one GPU at any one time. So therefore you need multiple, so that multiple people can be accessing it at the same time. So although you need multiple GPUs, which are very expensive, you obviously there's going to be times where there's low traffic and they're not being used at all. So you need to figure out a way of being able to scale the infrastructure up and down, so that when there's low traffic, you have a small number of GPUs, but then when there's large traffic, you can add GPUs, serve the traffic, and then scale back down to save costs. So the key kind of financial burden really with this kind of technology is the cost of generation. And when you compare it to something like, say, Spotify, it's the same kind of model whereby you subscribe to a service and you can consume content. When you're chatting to a twin, you're consuming content, whether that's text content, image content, but they differ in the sense that Spotify, they're not paying to generate the content, whereas we had to pay to generate the content. So therefore, although it's kind of similar subscription-based service, the economics that Spotify can be this cheap because all they're doing is distribution. They're not paying to generate anything. Whereas for AI content services, it's costing you an order of magnitude more to provide the service. So therefore, you have to charge a lot more to try and make it profitable. So that's kind of one of, and not just with that particular company, all AI generation content companies are not making money. They're spending more than they're earning because they're still trying to generate the user base. OpenAI and all of them, they're just spending to get people hooked and then try and monetize and make it profitable in the future. Like how many hundreds of millions OpenAI is still trying to raise just to keep the lights on. And this is going to be the case for a long time, I think. Yes, you can argue that over time, the technology, the GPUs will get cheaper, so therefore it should become financially easier to make profits because you're charging the same, but your costs are going down. I kind of disagree on that mindset in the sense that, yes, this H100 GPU, which is currently state of the art, will get cheaper as time goes on, but it's getting cheaper because it is being replaced by an even bigger and more expensive GPU, which is required to do this new kind of AI, which is even more complex. So although the GPU, the infrastructure will get cheaper, the technical requirements are going to become more complex, which means you're always going to need the state-of-the-art GPUs at any given time. So you're always going to be using the most expensive. So it's kind of, well, in some sense, yes, things might get cheaper, but in other ways, it might not.
Yeah, it's almost like the classic business case or tech business case in Silicon Valley now. I see it all the time. They're able to generate the investment, which is great because it's quite rare in the UK to see that. But very few of the businesses are actually profitable. And I know I studied international business at university a while ago now, a few years ago. But the thought process and everything you were being taught is, does it make profit? And the mindset's different over there. So they don't really care about it yet, which is just really interesting. It's hard to get around.
And that's when you create bubbles and hype bubbles. And those bubbles eventually burst. So I think it's great that people are innovating and trying to push the limits of what can be achieved. But you have to come back to the fundamentals, the basic principles of economics. It's like, how do you make money? Like, yeah, it's cool having this fancy tech. People are saying it's great. But if you can't make a profit from it, then
what's the point? Yeah. It brings us on a good point, actually. You're effectively a tech entrepreneur in many respects. I don't know whether you'd describe yourself as that, but I certainly think you are. And you've been a contractor, but you've managed to scale that into consultancy, which is probably the hardest thing to do as an individual freelancer contractor. What was the shift from like a mindset that made you able to actually hire someone and scale a business?
It probably stems from home, the way I grew up. My dad, he was a business owner in building. He was a builder, but he always ran his own businesses. So he kind of bled that entrepreneurial spirit into me. And my older brothers, they all went on to run their own businesses. So I think it was always kind of there, and it was always kind of expected. And that just kind of seemed to be the natural course that I want to run my own businesses. And although I was very much the black sheep in the sense that my dad and my three older brothers, they're all tradesmen essentially. An electrician, a plumber, kitchen fitter. I'm the one in tech. So yeah, kind of very much different in that respect. But it was the same mindset. Like, well, this is what I do. I'm going to make a business and I'm going to be successful. So that first step from being a sole contractor to then hiring my first employee, I mean, it's a big step. It's probably the most expensive and riskiest step you'll ever take, because if there's just you and you add one more person, you're almost kind of doubling your expenditure and all the other things you need to add on in terms of cost-wise. So you go from your current expenditure, essentially doubling it overnight. You need to make sure that you've always got enough business to cover that. If you've got 100 employees and you add one more, then that's a very small percentage what you're kind of adding on to your total expenditure. So it was risky, and it was scary in a way. But at the way things were, I had a lot of business and I had things coming up. So I just needed to make sure that I was always one step ahead, and that there was always going to be the next thing to work on. And then it's kind of, okay, we've gone from 1 employee. Hey, now we could do 2 employees, 3. Made use of apprentices early stage, and that was really useful. One kid, he's 17-year-old, but he was just a pure techie. So from day one, it's just like, yeah, this is what we do. This is the tech stack. Like, he was already billable within like weeks. He was like, just great. But I think those guys are quite rare to find. But for when you're in that very small scale startup phase, having someone who's essentially very cheap, but also very useful and can contribute to client projects is the dream. And then it's just a case of, right, rinse and repeat, right? How do we keep moving forward? How do we keep growing? How do we keep finding the new clients and making sure there's always enough work for people to work on?
Is it an enjoyable journey, or is it just relentless pressure?
I think those consulting days, there was a lot of good periods. When things are going well, then it's great. It's a lifestyle business. We never had too much work or had too many demands on what we had to do. We had no investors, so we had no one that we had to please or report to. Had no one kind of pressuring us from above. So as long as there was enough work for people to do, it was a very enjoyable time. Because I'm a coder, I'm a developer, I got to work on client projects and build new cool things and made a lot of good money. So there were periods where it was very good lifestyle business. I was never going to become a multimillionaire by doing that, but as long as things carry on as they were, then great. There were periods whereby when there's a downturn, projects maybe don't come off or get cancelled, and then you've kind of got people working for you, but there's not anything for them to work on. That's very scary. So then you kind of try and, well, okay, let's try and build our own thing. Let's work on our own product, or let's research or upskill in this type of technology while we're waiting for the next thing to come along. So that was scary. And then going into the kind of the full-time CTO role, that's when you're working in a small-scale startup, that's a very high-pressure environment. You're constantly grinding. You're constantly trying to push further. And when you're kind of the founding engineer, you're the one building everything. And then also trying to do the recruitment, trying to do the strategy and the planning and the research and the development. You have to wear a lot of hats, and you have a lot of responsibility, and it's just grind. It's grind. It's still good in the sense that, hey, I built this thing. Wow. I feel kind of proud of what I've been able to achieve and deliver. But then it's kind of straight on to the next thing, straight on. So it's grind. And it's not for everyone. And there's probably ways you could do it better. But that's just something you learn and gain over time, I think.
Yeah. For those thinking about entering the tech consultancy, contracting world, what should they know before jumping into it?
I think it's important to know what your niche is. If you're just going to advertise as a web developer, there's 1 billion web developers in the world. So, well, you're going to get lost in the competition. So I guess find what your niche is. Maybe that's a particular tech stack. Become really good in that thing that you do. Get a good, solid portfolio of projects you worked on, what you contributed, what you achieved. Maybe you're specializing in a particular industry. So yeah, I'm prop tech. I'm an expert in prop tech. I've got all of this background. I know the legislation. I know the legals. I know not just the code. I know the industry. So trying to specialize, whether it's tech or whether it's industry. So right, I'm the expert in this thing. Then you kind of put your head up above the competition. Because if you're working in prop tech and you need someone to hire, hey, this guy, yeah, he's really good at this tech. So is this guy. And this guy's got a lot of industry experience in prop tech. So I'm going to go for him rather than him. So I think, yeah, just finding your niche, become an expert at the thing you enjoy. And I think that's key as well. You've got to enjoy what you're doing. You're not going to want to spend countless hours working on things that you don't enjoy, or it's just soul destroying. Because when you are consulting and contracting and freelance, it's not your typical 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You're often working long hours, hitting deadlines. So it needs to be something you're going to enjoy and really feel rewarded by.
Yeah. I think the one thing people don't understand about the tech recruitment market is that recruiters, HR people are looking for individuals who have already done a lot of the experience. They are looking for the technology stack that is going to be used at the company. Hopefully you've done that before. Generally, they look for the same industry or at least a similar industry. For example, financial services. Have you worked for a bank or a fintech, an asset management, insurance firm, something similar? And a lot of people do, they try to, attain some kind of role that is a step up. It's only natural, but it's such a tricky market at the minute that a lot of individuals are finding it difficult to do so, because you have someone who's, I suppose, a level or even 2 levels above you going for the same role. Naturally, the company is going to go for the person who's the most experienced. And it's similar in the tech contracting market. And why a lot of software engineers struggle is because it's absolutely brutal. If you're 27, 28 years old, you're suddenly a principal software engineer, you think you're ready for the contracting world. You're going up against someone with 10 years experience or even 20 years experience. And a lot of companies will generally go for the most experienced engineer. And I don't know how that will change over the next few years, because like you said, you hired apprentices, and that is certainly a different skill set that you can gain a lot of value from. But it's something to, work on and understand your core expertise, how you can apply that.
Yes, and there's kind of other things I look for when I'm kind of recruiting as well. It's if you're someone who spent your entire career in a top bank, you're probably not going to be able to adapt to an early stage startup, because the requirements are so different. The way, the mentality, the way you work, you have a small, tight-knit team and you have to wear different hats. You're constantly kind of trying to hit the next target. And that's just such an entirely different world to being in the kind of the corporate. What boggles my mind is that you have a lot of people who will actively advertise, I'm ex-Microsoft, I'm ex-Google, I'm ex this and that. And I actively don't want to hire those people, because you're an ex. Why are you an ex? 1, you either weren't good enough, couldn't hack it. 2, you're too egotistical and you think you're too good for that kind of role, and therefore you're not going to fit into my team. And like various reasons why, fine, you're ex-Facebook, but I need someone who can come in. They're not going to be a drama. They're going to fit into the team and contribute, rather than making it all about themselves and their ego type of thing.
Yeah. If you were a permie software engineer in today's market, how do you enter the contracting world?
There's a number of ways. There's, first of all, go to recruiters, people who specialize in contracting, say, right, well, this is what I've done. I want to move into here. What advice can you give me? What do I need to do to my CV, etc.? And then they can try and find find your first kind of position, or you can go down the kind of pay per hour type platforms. There's Odesk and People Per Hour and Fiverr. Create a profile. So, right, this is my experience, and you pick up kind of small jobs, and that's kind of where I started really. Might have even been People Per Hour or one of those. So yeah, and that's where you kind of find your first gig, and it might be small and it might be insignificant, but it's kind of your first step. And then once you've done your first step, you get your feedback. Oh yeah, this guy's 5-star, and then that helps you get the next one. Yeah, he's 5-star. You build up your reputation, and then eventually you have bigger companies saying, oh, this guy's done 20 projects, all 5-star. Let's give him a try. So there's kind of, different routes. And in terms of kind of getting experience, this is something I'll also say to the kind of the juniors. You're a junior, you've got no experience, but people want experience. So how do you get that? And there's ways whereby you can join an open source project and contribute to that project and make it better. Like say on GitHub, you can be doing your pull requests into this particular project in the space that you're interested in, and that's your experience. So I've worked on a project that required management, it required understanding requirements, it meant producing good quality code, it meant producing adequate test cases that I contributed and made this product better. So there are ways you can gain experience without specifically working in companies.
Yeah, you mentioned that contract work is a lot about staying current, perhaps with the technologies, or at least the hype, perhaps AI. How do you stay current as a CTO or a software engineer? Especially when the technology landscape is changing weekly, if not daily.
That is something that is very hard to do when let's say you're in a period of rapid development and you're the kind of the hands-on engineer as well. When you're kind of in the weeds and in the trenches trying to get stuff done, it's very hard to kind of take a step back and see what's happening in the wider world. So you kind of have to force yourself times to kind of, this is going on day to day, but what is happening in the world? How can that project that guy's just advertised on LinkedIn, some new algorithm that they've developed, that sounds like it could solve one of the particular problems we're having in our system. So depending on where you are in your career and what you're doing day to day, sometimes you have the freedom to sit back and say, right, they're doing the development, they're doing the engineering. As long as they're doing what they're doing well, fine. That means I can step back. I can deal with the strategy, I can deal with the planning and the recruitment, but I can also spend time looking at what's out there. I've got time to go to conferences. I've got time to go to networking events. You just have to find the time. And that's, I think, the biggest difficulty.
Yeah. Are there any technologies that you prioritize learning?
Over the summer, I really got into vibe coding. So it's kind of, the concept's been around for a good while, and 6 months to a year. And then kind of periodically I would dip into it, see what's going on. Is it any good? Well, it's quite good at doing this. It's really bad at doing that. Then maybe a couple months later, try again. This particular LLM, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever, is actually quite good at doing this thing. Or Amazon Q is really good at doing this thing. So spending time kind of looking at what the different AI coding tools were available, what they were good at, what they were bad at. And then over the summer, I kind of thought, actually, this is now a big thing that a lot of people are doing, and there's a lot of success stories. So I dedicated a large chunk of time to just messing around and playing with it, seeing what could be achieved. And I kind of landed on Claude Code, command line prompts, tell it what you want it to build, and it builds it. And I don't think I've been as shocked by what can be achieved as I have this summer building pet projects with Claude Code. And I even kind of tried to force myself. I told it to build this project using a tech stack that I didn't know. Therefore, I couldn't go in and keep changing it and, I wanted it to do it. And I wanted it to see if it could do it without me telling it what to change or telling it where it's wrong. And I did that, and it's shockingly good. I mean, I built full systems that would have taken weeks, if not months, to build in hours and days. Now, whether what it's produced is production ready or not, I don't know. You need to do proper auditing. But I think what was really useful is that although I don't understand that tech stack, I understand software engineering principles. I know how software should be built. So I could tell it, I build this platform, and it needs to do X, Y, and Z. It needs to be built using this type of data model. It needs to have this kind of module system whereby we can extend it later. It needs to have this testing framework so that each new feature has to devise its own set of tests that need to be executed whenever you add a new feature. So just by giving it the process and what should be built and how it should be built, in what order, I think that helped a lot. So when things didn't go well, so it built a feature, but I look and, there's a bug here. Because I've got a lot of experience in debugging, so right, okay, I'll open the debug console, look at the HTML, I can look in the JavaScript. Go to this module, and you need to fix this because it's doing this, and you're doing it wrong. So I was using my experience to kind of guide it to solve problems that it couldn't solve on its own. So I think that helped a lot as well.
So what is vibe coding?
It's very much like product. Instead of being a coder, you're a product developer, whereby instead of telling a human coder, right, build this software with this specification, it needs to do X, Y, and Z, come back when it's finished. So I could give that spec to a human and they would go and build it, but I could also give that spec to an AI and it would generate the code. It would generate the structure. It would generate all the unit tests, the integration tests, and you can run it and you can see it and you interact with it. And you say, well, okay, this kind of works, but move this button here, add these items to the menu. When you click on this button, it needs to have this animation. So you're just describing your requirements and it builds the code to produce the software that you want.
Yeah. Which technologies are you actually using? Like Cursor, Windsurf?
I've used Cursor. I haven't used Windsurf. So Claude Code's kind of the bulk of what I've been doing. When I was working on kind of Amazon's Lambdas, I was using Amazon Q, which is kind of their version. I've used ChatGPT, but less so for generating code. What it's quite good at is generating prompts for generating code. So you go to ChatGPT and say, right, this is what I want to achieve from an AI coding tool. Generate a prompt that I can give to the tool that would clearly explain what needs to be built and how it should be done. So it's kind of LLMs telling LLMs what to do and that kind of thing. But it's just experimenting, really. It's kind of, well, this tool is really good at doing this thing. This tool is really good at doing this thing. So then just finding out, right, step 1, go there, step 2, go there, get the output and see what works.
Yeah. How do you prompt the chatbot for something like that, as technical as that? And what's your thought process? What do you actually type in?
I type in requests the same way I would ask a developer to build a feature. So I have the technical jargon, I have the technical understanding of what this feature is, why it's needed, and how it should work. So by structuring your text, it's just free text, literally. Create a new page. On this page, there needs to be a map widget. There needs to be a block next to it with this text. Blah, blah, blah. You're describing in human text what you want to see in your software. Click enter. It goes off and you can see it kind of reasoning. Okay, so now I've built this. Next, I will look at this and because of something that was built before, I need to make sure that it's properly linked. So it can actually look through your whole code base and make sure that this thing you're building here won't conflict with what it generated before, and that everything's linked together, and that your test cases are updated so that this new feature, you need to add additional test requirements. And it just kind of does everything. It's literally just type in what you want, click enter, go make a cup of tea and come back and
it's there. It's good. So what does the next gen software engineer look like?
I think what you need to learn is how to do software engineering from a theoretical perspective. What is software engineering? How do you make good software? How do you recognize what bad software looks like? What are the right sequence in which you need to do things without looking at any code? So how do you make good software? What is the testing strategy? All of these things, which you can learn from a book. It's understanding the concepts, and also like security. You need to understand what is software security. What are the potential vulnerabilities? Because AI generated code is quite famous now for being insecure, easily hackable. So you need to know what are the potential threats, and therefore how can your software be updated to avoid that threat, making sure that this database query, it's filtered for SQL injections. The front end, you're structuring it so that you're avoiding cross-site scripting. So these are all the things you need to be aware of and make sure are being implemented in your software. I think coding in itself is going to become largely redundant, but I think you still will need to understand code, not because you're writing it, but because you will need to debug it. So the AI has generated the script and it doesn't quite work, and you can't, through this conversation, you're not able to get it to fix itself. You know, there's a bug, fix the bug, it's still there. Fix the bug, it's still there. You do get into those kind of cycles whereby something's not quite right, and despite what you're telling it, it's not able to fix itself. So if you're not an experienced software engineer, you would literally be stuck. Like, how do you progress? And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. People who start building this AI code and making really good progress without being an experienced programmer. But then they're eventually going to hit a problem that the AI can't fix. So therefore, as the software developer engineer, you need to be able to look at this code and say, that's probably where the problem is. And then either fix it yourself or ask it to fix it. So you do need to be able to understand code, understand how to debug and find problems. But as for creating code, I think that's just going to be all automated.
Okay. So actually building code could be obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you're going to lose software developers because they still need to be experienced to do the things that I've said. They need to be good enough to be able to look at code and debug it manually. They need to know all the pitfalls to avoid. So you're still going to need software engineers and developers, but they're just going to be 10 times more productive because they're not spending time writing the code.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest myths about AI at the minute is that it's going to replace the software engineers. And well, clearly you've said it, it won't. It'll just create them differently. Mm-hmm. They'll have to tailor themselves.
If you look back in history, there's been many, many occasions where new tools have made rapid improvements in the efficiency of developers. I mean, you go back to the beginning, people were writing binary, people were writing assembly code, like the very basics of machine code. We can't do that now because the code bases of millions of lines of code. You can't just go that low level. So then they built new generations of coding languages that abstracted all that really long, tedious technicality. So instantly, by creating this first generation software programming language, developers 10 times their productivity. Right, great. But then they develop a new generation of coding language, which 10x their efficiency. You create new frameworks based on those languages so that you don't need to build everything from scratch. You just use this framework, which does all the tedious parts and allows you to just create the customizations that you need. You 10x your productivity. So there's always been a series of innovations that have increased developer productivity. And yet today there's more developers than there's ever been. So it's not like, okay, yeah, this new thing, it's going to increase productivity, but is it going to replace developers? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, let's get honest about the AI hype cycle. You've been in the trenches. So when it comes to AI right now, what actually exists and what's completely nonsense? I suppose the latter. What are the biggest myths at the minute when it comes to AI?
The biggest myth is that people think it's a magic black box where you can just put stuff in and gold comes out the other end. That's not how AI works. AI in its purest form is a form of statistics. It's calculating what is the most likely thing to be correct, whether that's doing some kind of prediction or anything. It's just pure statistics based on probability. So everything that comes out of any kind of AI is a best guess. It's not truth. It's just, we think this is probably the right answer. Sometimes that can be very accurate and reliable. Sometimes it's 50-50. But people still seem to think that you ask ChatGPT a question, what it tells you is true. It's not. It's just what it thinks to be true. I mean, you could say the same thing about people. I could ask you a question and you could tell me an answer and I believe you're true, but most of the time people are not. It's whether it's, misinformed or actively lying. I think AIs don't tend to lie, but they can be misinformed. And there's kind of an assumption that the AIs are being creative and being original, but they're not. They're basically pattern matching. So whatever they've been trained on is what they're going to produce an output from. They're never likely to produce something that is truly novel and truly original, because everything is based on what they've learned previously. Which philosophically, you could say the same thing about humans. Like, the Beatles didn't invent rock and roll. They just took something that existed before and changed it to make something new. Everything is built on what came before. So it's not original, it's not creative. It might appear so, but it's just based on what it has learned. And I think a lot of businesses, every startup now, it's AI this, AI that, everything's AI. And it is a hype cycle. And I liken it a bit to the 2017 crypto hype cycle. And that's when I was doing consultancy, and everyone was coming to me saying, we need blockchain. We need blockchain for our project. Right, okay. And then you talk to them for 10 minutes and you'd realize you don't need blockchain. What you need is a SQL database. End of story. We'll build you it. It'll cost you a tenth of the cost. Will be built in a tenth of the time, and it will solve your problem. You don't need blockchain. I kind of feel like we're doing a similar kind of hype cycle at the minute where everything has to be AI. We have a product. We need to put AI into it. Just AI that thing. Make that AI. It's like, well, no. What's the problem? What problem are you trying to solve? Figure that out first, and then decide how to solve it. Maybe AI would help. Maybe you don't need an LLM for this function. Maybe you just need an if statement. It's like, again, a tenth of the cost, a tenth of the time. You need to think, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Just because AI is trendy and investors want to see AI in your product, it doesn't mean that it's the best thing for you. AI is expensive. Using AI is expensive, like I said before. You need GPUs running, or you need to use an API to some other service. And that's expense. And LLMs can take a long time to generate responses. There's pros and cons, and you need to be sensible and level-headed. Think, right, what are the pros? What are the cons? Is this the right solution to this problem? And then decide.
Yeah. So which of these AI products, technologies, trends will quietly disappear over the next few months? What is just hype?
What is just hype?
Or is it just the consultancies pretending to be AI-led?
Yeah, I mean, I think the language will change, in the sense that at the minute, everyone is pushing, this is AI, this is AI, this is AI generated, this is AI powered, because that's the hype at the minute. I think in time, the language will change in that, yeah, okay, we're building this product. It's probably got some AI in it, but we're selling the product. We're not selling the AI. And I think that's kind of where we'll get back to. And again, similar kind of things happening in the crypto scene. People are building kind of blockchain elements into their product, but they're no longer selling it as a blockchain product. It's just something that's in the background. You might not even know about it. You need to sell a product that people want. People don't care about the technology. They don't care what's going on behind the scenes. Is this something that I'm going to enjoy or make my life in some way better? If it does, I'll give you my money. If it doesn't, I'll walk away.
Yeah. So what kind of products do you think we'll see next?
What will we see next? It's things that will make people's life a bit easier. If you're doing a job that requires manual kind of cycles of, I just need to keep turning the handle, the same thing, day in, day out, those kinds of tasks will be automated because there's not a great deal of complexity. There may be some kind of reasoning, or yeah, okay, based on this information, do that, or do that instead. Doing those kind of menial tasks will become automated. And that means people can spend more time doing the thing they should be doing or what they want to be doing, less time doing this manual admin. So for example, the company I'm going to work with next, they have people on the ground providing healthcare and support to elderly in their homes. Their job is to look after people, yet they're spending a large chunk of their time doing admin. The more time they're spending doing admin, the less time they're spending looking after people. So this is an ideal kind of use case whereby let's just automate that admin. So you can spend your time doing what you need to do. It's the kind of the small incremental improvements in people's everyday life that will gain the most traction and be around for the longest and kind of survive this kind of hype.
Yeah. Are there any underrated consumer AI tools or technologies or products that you've seen paying attention to at the minute? Because everyone's still talking about ChatGPT at the minute, and a few other technologies are moving into the mainstream spotlight. Is there anything we're unaware of and we probably ought to be?
There's loads of talk about agentic workflows and how much of it is useful or not. It's to be defined, but not to be seen. But I think the ability to have small, specified agents that do very specific jobs that you can chain together to replace a workflow, kind of like what I just said. You've got this task, read this document, and then based on the content of this document, either send an email to this person or create a new task for this agent that then does a secondary level of research. So I'm trying to do specialized jobs that can chain together to replace manual labor in doing this. I think those kind of background agent workflows will become really useful. I also think we also need to change the way we think about solving problems, because a lot of the time people are building solutions to automate a human's task, which kind of on surface makes sense, right? Okay, this person's doing this admin task, therefore we automate that task. But if you take a step back, you realize, well, why is that human doing that human task? It's because the system has been designed around the requirement of this human doing this manual set of sequence tasks, because that's how people work and how they've kind of adapted that from their previous way of working. But if you take a step back, you think, well, can we not just take this whole workflow, think about it differently, and instead of kind of going from A to B to C to D, let's just kind of create this new thing that just goes straight from A to Z. Because you're taking the human out of the loop. It's like, well, yeah, a human had to do those things. So instead of just replacing those things, just replace the whole workflow, because the human is no longer needed. So yeah, there's those kinds of things as well. It's all just what's going to make people's lives easier.
Well, if you had your own agents doing your dirty work for you, then I suppose that's what you want.
You have to kind of look through the hype. You have people posting articles about how they made $100,000 in the first month because they automated this marketing cycle whereby they have these LLMs that generate text and then go on and generate some images and then post to here and post to there and have this lovely diagram. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I think that's kind of where things will be going anywhere. Whether that's actual kind of AI or whether it's just simplified workflows, who knows?
Yeah. In terms of the AR, VR headsets that I've seen, I was actually in a Curry's a couple of years ago and someone bought one right in front of me. And it was like the most expensive one there. I barely knew these things existed. And then someone was spending a couple of grand on this headset. I couldn't believe it. Do you think that will become mainstream soon?
People have been asking that question for many years. Like VR headsets, they've been around decades.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of, the technology is always improving, but they just never seem to fit or hit that product market fit. It's like, yeah, it's really cool. And you can put one on and you can play games and think, wow, this is amazing. But I think for a lot of people, it's a bit of a novelty. Like, oh yeah, it's cool, fun, but I'll put it on and I'll forget about it. Some people get really into it and they're kind of playing that a lot. My nephew, he's kind of playing on his a lot. It needs to evolve into a way in which it's no longer about buying this big expensive piece of tech that only does one thing really well, like let's say for gaming. What the industry's been waiting on, and it still hasn't really hit, although for years they've been trying to build them, is AI-enabled glasses. So just normal, regular glasses, not big, bulky things that you could put on, and you could have kind of an overlay of some digital content that's just kind of incrementally adding a little bit of extra to what you otherwise would have. Meta's brought out some glasses recently which are LLM enabled. So you can have your Ray-Bans and ask Meta to find me the nearest restaurant and what have you, and it will tell you where to go and what to do. And that's quite cool. But I think until they really crack the visual element of being able to display digital content overlaid in the physical world in a way that is unnoticeable. So they just look like regular glasses. Put them on and they add something that you didn't have before. They add something that's adding real value and making life either more fun, enjoyable, or more useful.
Yeah. When you imagine a fully integrated AI, AR, and VR world, what excites you most? Or does it just scare you?
So I was kind of working on this when Metaverse as a concept was like really big. And everyone was saying, the future is Metaverse. Meta invested billions trying to build this Metaverse and crushed in flames. I think they tried to build something they thought people needed, but then realized people don't need that. So again, it was a solution looking for a problem. Until they find the problem that needs to be solved, I don't think it will become a thing. There will be novelty things that come along, like the Meta glasses that you can talk to. Yeah, that's quite cool. But until it's really solving a real problem, it's just going to be a novelty that's kind of on the sidelines, like it has been for years.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as we start to wrap up, I wanted to reflect on what I'd call the creator's paradox. So you built one of the world's first large-scale AI chat systems successfully, but what did you expect when people would start forming genuine emotional bonds with digital companions?
What did I expect? I don't really know. I think I kind of got carried away with the idea of could it be done? I never really spent enough time thinking, should it be done? And I also think kind of in the early days, it was a different approach. It was more kind of Instagram style. And then they wanted to kind of go down a stronger adult route. It's one of those things you don't really realize you're in until you stepped out of it. And then you can look back and think, oh, was that for the betterment of humanity? And in certain ways, you think, well, yeah, it is, because you're giving people something they can't find elsewhere. You're giving new revenue streams to creators who don't have to generate content themselves. You are solving real problems. But with that, are you creating problems? And you do hear on the news that there are some people using some companion bots that got too involved in the responses that was given them, maybe suggesting that you should commit suicide, and people have done this. And there's like a new term in psychology coming around called AI psychosis or something like that, where some people just get too involved and begin to lose the concept that this is fake. They believe it too much and they get too involved, and that has real negative effects on their lives. And that's a thing, and maybe that's going to become a bigger thing in the future. So these AI companies are going to have to do more and more on their guard railing to make sure that their consumers are protected. I know at Ohchat we put a lot of time and effort into guard railing, so that we made sure that the LLMs, they could not respond to certain topics, whether that's murder, rape, pedophilia, all these kind of topics and illegal things that are not only illegal, but just immoral. So you have in your rules, you cannot respond to these kind of topics. And you say, right, and so the LLM should always respond, I can't talk about that, let's chat about something else. So new technologies always bring new problems. And when the new problems arise, the technologies have to adapt to overcome. And it's a constant kind of battle. But companies that are making the right decisions on safeguarding their customers will be successful, and those that don't are going to have a lot of problems, I think, with people doing bad things as a response to using their technology. And that's kind of a whole new world that might come around.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be more legislation from the government on that? What can they do?
Yeah, what can they do? It's like, what can they do? They can't just say ban all chatbots, because a lot of them are doing good things, and they're doing things in a safe, controlled way that are proving to be really beneficial to businesses and people. So you can't just blanket ban them all. So therefore, how do you kind of legislate that, well, they can only do this, they can't do that? And there's already rules in place that say that your product, your software should not be able to promote illegal things. So you already have some legislation there. It's probably going to come down to publicity more than regulation. If there's a growing amount of negative publicity against certain technologies, and people can see that these things are having a negative impact on individuals or groups of people, then they'll probably just become less popular and less used. So maybe it's something that's kind of self-regulating in a sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. Evolving. And personally for yourself, what's next? I know you have a new gig lined up.
Yes, so very different. So my career has largely been built around building software and being quite hands-on, taking ideas and building and launching and making them, helping them grow. This new project, it's in healthcare, as I kind of mentioned. Home Instead, they provide free, not freelancers, franchises to agencies that want to provide social care, healthcare to elderly people who want to stay at home and don't want to go into a nursing home. So you're an old person, you want to stay at home, you're going to need help. So these agencies go in, provide the care and help that they need. Why did I choose to go into this industry for this particular company? Because they don't build any of their own software. They essentially manage and support off-the-shelf software for these agencies and caregivers. So why would I want to join them? And the key is, one, everyone's going to get old. Everyone's going to want to stay at home and not go into care home. So there's a very real problem I want to solve for myself and my family and everyone else and you. And so there's a problem. It's a growing problem in that people are getting older and there's going to be less and less people to look after them. So you're going to have a supply and demand problem where the demand is great, the supply is low. So therefore, this industry, which is very underdeveloped technologically, is going to need technology to plug that gap. There's going to be a lot of industries where people are losing their jobs because of AI. And that's going to be bad. There's going to be a lot of people out of work. But there's some industries where AI is needed to fill the gaps that are not going to be there for people to do. So there's only going to be a limited number of carers, a growing number of people that need care for. So they're going to need technology to plug those gaps and provide the care that they need. And that's kind of where I come in. I want to be the innovator that is building this new technology, taking this industry, which is kind of lagging way behind other industries in terms of kind of innovation, push them forward, be innovation first, and help solve that problem. Because there's a very clearly defined problem where technology can be for a factor for good, and I can be in there to have that positive impact.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about it once it materializes. Awesome. For those interested in learning more about you, your companies, your journey, what's the best way to find you?
Probably LinkedIn. I kind of use that a lot. LinkedIn, Adam Clary. Feel free to connect. Happy to chat. And I like to talk to people. I think with this new role, because it's an industry I'm not used to, I'm going to need to connect with more people in kind of health tech, people who are providing products and solutions in this industry. Really want to connect, see what's going on out there, whether we can work together, and just know what people. I'm a curious person, and I like to know what people are working on, whether it has any relevance to what I'm doing or not. Just kind of, hey, that's really cool. Tell me more. And because I've had this diverse background of working in different industries, I found that within this industry in fintech, there was a particular problem to solve. But then I went into prop tech, completely different industry, different problems, but there was overlaps whereby this solution actually quite fit this problem over here, which wouldn't have been thought about on its own. If you'd only ever worked in prop tech, you might only have a kind of a blinkered view on how to solve certain problems. But having this diverse background means you can kind of pluck different ideas and solutions from different industries and apply them in a novel way to your problem. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Adam.
Thank you.